Welcome to the Fair and Greed Daily Business Interview. Transport accounts for about 18% of Australia's domestic greenhouse gas emissions. But that term transport covers all sorts of areas: planes, trains, automobiles. But what about maritime navigation? Boats, vessels. Given the vast majority of Australians live on the coast, you'd think we are fairly advanced in shifting maritime operations to green technology. I'm not so sure if that's correct, though. One of the leaders in the push to shift the industry from diesel and other types of power to fully electric is Dr Iain Percy OBE, former Olympic sailing gold medalist and founder of Artemis Technologies. Iain, welcome to Fear and Greed.
Hi, Sean.
Before we get into Artemis itself, how green is maritime navigation, both here and globally?
Yeah, it's not the best actually, but to be fair to the industry, it's put its hands up, and it put its hands up fairly voluntarily in 2017. The International Maritime Organization announced quite how polluting it is worldwide, and I think because it, by its nature, a lot of maritime is on big ships going between countries. No one had really noticed. Had been flying a little bit under the radar, but the truth of it is emitting almost as much as automotive or aerospace, and it's particularly emitting of some of the more dangerous greenhouse gases as well.
Okay, so just give me more detail. What is it? The big tankers that are doing a lot of the damage?
Well, it is definitely the big tankers, but actually domestic maritime accounts for about a third of the worldwide emissions from maritime. So the ferries and fast ferries, particularly that we see here in Sydney, are a large contributor. And as I say, it's not just the CO2, which is obviously a global challenge. It's the NOx emissions that are having real health effects. And in a city like Sydney, where a circular quay, there's a lot of people living, working and eating around there. That's probably one of the more immediate issues that needs to be solved, is the damage to the lungs and the health effect of the NOx emissions.
How aware are we of this, Iain?
Well, I certainly wasn't aware until 2017. 2017, the International Maritime Organization really announced it. And they said, at the time, fairly unambitiously, it sounds now, that they're going to halve their emissions by 2050. We go forward 5-6 years and it doesn't really sound that impressive. And certainly with Artemis, we're pushing to try and change domestic maritime much faster than that. And I think there are solutions out there today that can not only be green, but can actually be cheaper and can actually save money.
Okay, so let's tell me about Artemis. It was spun out of the America's Cup Artemis racing team, wasn't it? Did someone tell me that?
Yeah, someone told you that. So yeah, I was running Artemis Racing for the 2017 America's Cup. Artemis was a Swedish challenge. I'm British, and we were made up of about 30 different countries, of which there was a lot of Aussies, as is the case with a lot of top sailing teams, to be honest. And so, yeah, we had a really successful campaign in 2017, but like America's Cup's a funny competition. Those will remember back from when you guys won the Cup, it all changes. The rules change. You're in a new country with a new boat. And the problem with that is the team often stop. And that's not very sustainable from a kind of team perspective either. So we decided we needed to keep going, trying to do something with more long-term sustainability for ourselves as well as for the environment. And at the same time, the International Maritime Organization are putting their hands up saying that we really are polluting, and it felt like we had to make a difference there. So we kind of started with a team and with a mission, but without a product. And that's really where my background before sport and economics, the team's background in physics modeling, got to work. And we started looking at lots of different solutions, from wing cells on ships to alternative fuels to hydrogen, looking for areas where there could be a product that could make a difference. It could reduce emissions, but it actually worked financially without state support. Because one of the things I didn't have a huge amount of faith in was that trying to collate the world's state support to be in time. Now, I would be a big advocate for pushing harder and for more nudge towards environmental change. But with the Artemis products, we're always thinking we need to make it work without that.
Stay with me, Iain. We'll be back in a minute. My guest today is Dr Iain Percy OBE, founder of Artemis Technologies. Okay, so what are the products that Artemis has developed that look like they have sustainability, for want of a better phrase?
Well, the area that we found made financial sense was in any part of maritime that was high speed, medium distance. When we achieve it by using some of the hydrofoiling technology that was developed in the America's Cup. So it's not like the hydrofoils we saw in the 70s and 80s here on the harbour. This is a hydrofoil which is very much just an aeroplane wing under the water, has no inherent stability, but thanks to modern computing and the work that went on in top racing teams, were able to control the boats. But the result is a dramatic reduction in drag. And what that means is finally maritime is efficient enough to allow battery electric to do reasonable ranges. The problem without that, if you just put batteries in a standard boat, it's fine if you just want to go slowly and not go very far. But if you want to, say, come in from Manly every single morning as a commuter, it's only viable with something like the Artemis e-foiling solution.
So it's not just about electrification, it's actually also about efficiency of the boat itself and less drag, etc. What point are you at being able to roll that out to potentially putting it on a Manly ferry?
Well, you're absolutely right. The two things go hand in hand in maritime. It need to electrify fast maritime. You needed a solution not only to the electrical system, the energy storage system, but you needed a way to step change the amount of drag that was achieved. And that's really where the e-foiling comes in. So we have these boats out there already. At the moment, they're being used in the workboat sector. So smaller craft, 12 to 15 meter boats, servicing ports, pilot boats, wind farms. And next summer, we launched the first of the ferries. So 150 pack ferries are going to European cities to start delivering fast passenger transport.
That's very exciting, isn't it?
It's cool. Yeah, no, it's really, really cool. I mean, I think it's what's really nice is there's such an appetite to decarbonize that people, and to an extent, a faith in us. And I think once you go in our smaller boats, which in some ways is harder to do, they have a lot of faith. But it's really nice that these European cities are taking on this fairly radical transformative technology before they've seen it in the water. And there's plenty of other cities sitting there waiting to see the full scale first vessel out on the water next summer.
Yeah, so it's electric maritime manufacturing. So that's happening in Australia. You're selling into Europe. Am I right in that so far?
No, well, our company's based in Belfast, Northern Ireland. But
yes, right.
What we make as a company is more the propulsion systems, batteries, foils. And so we make the boats locally. I think one of the things we don't want to do is be slightly contradictorily shipping very heavy, big objects all the way around the world on ships. So the beauty of that is we get to partner. We get to partner with local business. And the one place where that's easy is in Australia, where there's such a huge skill in composite carbon fiber boat building.
So presumably that's an opportunity for Australia then, if we get behind it.
100%. It's an opportunity for the shipyards here in Australia, as I said, of which there's some real skills. And it's an opportunity for the people, because what you have done in Australia is adopted water-based transport as a commuter in a way that they have in a few parts of the world. But in Sydney, as we all know, the waterway it's just part of getting to work in the morning. So the challenge with that is because there's a lot of these ferries, it's doing a huge amount of damage to the environment and the health of the people locally. So I think it's an opportunity to support the locals with faster, cleaner transport, but also on the supply chain side to build jobs here locally in Australia.
What's the government's view on this? Are they providing help at this point?
As I said, I think the key for Artemis, and when we developed our first product, is looking at it from an economic standpoint, was that we want this to work without subsidy. There are many routes that do that, and the classic Manly ferry would be one, that because it does enough miles, it runs all day, the efficiency of these boats pays back. There are other routes where it's not quite going to fly without some economic support. But we're focusing first on the routes that do prove the concept out without needing financial subsidy. And then from there, hopefully governments all around the world will decide to do small nudges to decarbonize the whole of the waterways.
Okay, Iain Percy, what's the goal in 10 years' time then? Is it to have a big chunk of the waterways decarbonised?
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think it's really possible. I think domestic, high-speed maritime, fast commuter ferries, offshore wind vessels, offshore oil and gas vessels is one area where we really can decarbonize and not lose money. So we've got to jump on these opportunities. I'm someone who campaigns hard for making a difference through technology. But, I look at a lot of solutions that aren't win-wins, and I worry about that. We have to make choices as a society. But when we do have some low-hanging fruit, let's grab hold of it.
Look, I don't think we ever have gold medalists on Fear and Greed, given we're a business podcast. So I have to ask you, what's it like to win a gold? It was, in your case, it was at the Sydney Olympics. What was it like?
Sydney, and then in China and London. But the first one here in Sydney was when I was 23 years old.
Wow.
I must admit, at that point, it was quite a special feeling. But I made the mistake after Sydney of thinking it was all down to talent. But when Athens came along, I learned very much the hard way. Talent
Right.
has nothing to do with hard work, and so the next medals then flowed after that. But for sure, it's a special thing to do. It's for me, it's sport, business. It's always about the journey. It's about the people you're doing it with. The standing on the podium at the end. It generally gives you a hangover, but the real fun is made in the teamwork beforehand.
Ian, thank you for talking to Fear and Greed.
Thank you. Thanks, Sean.
That was Dr. Iain Percy OBE, former Olympic sailing gold medalist and founder of Artemis Technologies. You've been listening to the Fear and Greed Daily Business Interview. Don't forget to join us every morning for the full episode of Fear and Greed, Australia's best business podcast. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.